Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome again to another Sabbath Insight. I want to welcome you for those of you who are here for the first time, those of you who are, consistently here and consistently checking in and, allowing this to be a space to reflect and to connect for you. I want to thank you for gathering in this sacred space. In this session, I wanted to build on the science of, unity, but more importantly, personal development, as a starting point and a nucleic responsibility for those of us who nation build, and just sort of connecting that to a profound truth of oneness or we being one, so I want to journey a little bit into personal development, right? I know a lot of times living in a time where there is very limited personal accountability, people don't really see that the cornerstone of the community and subsequently the cornerstone of the nation is personal development. You can't really build anything, around a conglomerate of sick people other than madness, so true nation building, and more specifically, the kind of nation building that will last, the type of community building that will last, it begins with inner transformation. And that transformation that occurs on the interior, it requires a level of work sometimes that people are not interested in, where the individual has to be transformed. But if you sort of take a moment in quiet reflection and take a deep breath, because I know sometimes topics when we start dealing with personal accountability, inner development, self-actualization, these are the topics sometimes that people shy away from. They're just not as interested because of the work. It's very easy. It's super easy to point fingers and blame. Well, I would be like this if this didn't happen, or if this person wasn't like this, or if the country was like this, or if I lived here, or if I had this kind of money, But if you allow the Ruach HaKodesh to fill you, and to really function within you, then you'll be able to begin your journey of real transformation and change with setting divine intention, as opposed to looking for who's the next person or situation that you're going to blame. So I would say as we begin to go through this journey and this insight, set an intention, that we will have a shared sense of unity, and that requires some level of disclosure in order to unite with people. But, that there'll be a shared sense of unity, number one. Number two, that this will be one of those times where it'll be a catalyst in your life for change, and a catalyst in your life for change in your community. Try to see it as maybe a possibility, like right now in the moment. Empowerment is in the moment, as opposed to shying away and running away, because words like accountability, are being utilized, or really tapping into your own inner testimony, your own inner experience that maybe you've been running from, that, has been keeping you from not only being able to connect with yourself, but to connect consistently and in a healthy manner with other people, So I want to begin with, looking at Torah a bit and really seeing how the concepts of personal accountability, doing personal work, the principle of unity, how it's founded on that sort of personal development that we have to all touch on. And, it's important for us to always base what we're talking about and what we're doing on the words of our ancestors. I know for some, again, you want the mystic and you want the magic. You got to grow up. And I'm going to say that repeatedly because it bears repeating. It needs to be repeated that, so many people want so much magic, but do nothing with the magic because you don't have the morals or the intelligence to know what to do with it. So people say, "Oh, Chief, well, talk about this, and let's talk about the Orisha. Let's talk about this, and let's not. Let's nation build. Let's community build, and let's foundate that upon principles of morals and honor. Let's eradicate those demons out of your life, and let's do what's intelligent. It's not intelligent for you to serve foreign deities. Like I said, many of you are not Nigerian, but you want to serve Nigerian gods because you're foolish and you're mentally lazy. So I'm dealing with structures and a system and a history that applies to my bloodline and applies to the majority of the melanin rich individuals who live in North America. This is our story, like it or not. So we're going to talk about Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a leader who had a divine calling, and his divine calling was to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after they had been attacked and left vulnerable to attack. They have been destroyed. And once those walls or that hedge or those protective walls were destroyed, the city was left vulnerable to attack. So Nehemiah was an individual who understood something very key. And what he understood was that the nation of Yasharel, or what we say Israel, but Yasharel, it had the potential to rebuild itself as a protected people and as a unified people. But in order for that to even occur or for that to even happen, the people of Yasharel had to individually be strengthened and brought or returned into alignment with the divine order and the divine principle. So before any nation building or any repair for the collective could happen, the individuals had to first realign and had to take a better look at their covenants, that they were making, or their contracts that they were making with alien ideas, alien deities. And what that required was repentance. I've spoken about repentance many times, but repentance is turning your way of thinking. I'm thinking a certain way and now I'm turning another way, right? So there's an action that's associated with the thought. Not only are my thoughts changing, but as a result, I'm making mid-course corrections. I'm not just defending the direction I want to go into because I'm silly and all I know how to do is to fight and defend whatever it is I want to do. But when I'm repenting, I'm making mid-course corrections, and it's apparent, it's obvious that I am moving and acting in a different way. So they had to repent, and then they had to renew their covenant with their Yah. And that required them to actively participate in the rebuilding process. So there was a change of thought, and then there was a renewed covenant, right? And what makes Nehemiah's, I think, story very, very profound, or more specifically, I would say what makes his leadership so profound was that he didn't just order people to go out and start building. Let's just go buy some land. Let's build some places off the grid. Let's get some solar panels. He didn't just do it that way, but he began by appealing to their sense of faith and to their sense of purpose. Like, let's begin before we do anything. Let's deal with where your faith lies. Let's start there. Let's deal with where your purpose lies. Let's deal with that. So one of the things that Nehemiah required was that each family worked on the section of the wall that was closest to their own homes. Now, I thought this was very significant and very key, because what it kind of symbolizes is how individual efforts that contribute to the mission and the vision and the strategy of the whole, they will contribute to the collective success of the all. And even working on the wall that's closest to your house is like, you got to clean up your own home first before you start going out and pointing fingers. Well, you need to go do this and you need to go do that. Why don't you fix the part, clean up your own house? So Nehemiah's leadership was powerful in that sense. It was it was profound, like I said, because it demonstrated that once you empower individuals to take responsibility for their own portion, take responsibility for their own work, the entire nation could be fortified as a result. Individual who doesn't take responsibility for their own families, for their own work, for their own study, for their own growth and development, they become a weak point, or as we say, like a chink in the armor. But they become a weak point where someone could get through and cause harm to the nation. So everyone has to hold down their respective roles, and that's not just communally. That's also within the family. The women have to do what they're supposed to do. The men have to do what they're supposed to do. The children have to do what they're supposed to do. The elders have to do what they're supposed to do. And if anyone doesn't hold down what they're supposed to hold down, they leave a hole open, where discord and disharmony can creep in. Nehemiah did, when you study the story, Nehemiah did face opposition both externally, from the enemies that were seeking to attack Jerusalem, but there was also internal discord as well. So through his level of dedication, you know, um, to addressing and touching upon Yah's purpose and his ability to strategically organize, and his ability to inspire a collective effort, he was able to complete the wall in what would be considered a pretty remarkably short time, I would say. So looking at the story of Nehemiah and touching upon what we're looking at today in terms of unity, um, personal responsibility as well as collective responsibility, but personal responsibility and how your individual actions affect the whole tribe if you're truly a part of a tribe. The story sort of teaches us that when we build ourselves spiritually and when we work with the divine alignment, our collective efforts then can produce these very remarkable, we'll say, they can produce these very remarkable results, you know. So often I see people come into environments, sometimes it's my environment, and they sit back and listen and watch. And they're saying, well, do y'all got this? And do y'all got that? And will y'all do this for me? And will y'all do that for me? And if I join ANU, am I going to get this? And they don't want to build themselves up. They don't want to do their actual work. They want the unity. They want to profit off of the unity and the work of everyone else. So as a result, that person who comes in with that sort of mentality, they become a danger to the community. They become the weak point. The unity and the communal strength demonstrated by the story of Nehemiah, that unity and that communal strength, it really exemplifies how when people who are Yasharel, when people who are connected to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Creator, when, they exemplify the individual development, it, and it's rooted in righteousness. Let me just add that because I know so many people they don't want the righteousness part, but they might want the personal development. But when it's rooted in righteousness, it directly impacts the health and the stability of the entire community. you know, your growth and your development and your healthy standing does affect the entire community. And we'd have to look at the opposite of that, your disease, and your stuntedness will also affect the entire community. So it's just like when you look at the story of Nehemiah and how Nehemiah um, called the people to renew their covenant and to rebuild their nation. In this instance with Anu and with these insights that I share, every Sabbath here, I'm also calling you today to rebuild your own spiritual foundation. It's this constant sort of call. I don't want to say constant because it doesn't last forever, and there's a time period for everything, and then things stop, and it's like, yeah, you should have did what you were supposed to do when you were supposed to do it. Um, but I am definitely calling you today to rebuild your spiritual foundation and contribute to the collective growth of the community. For those who are ANU, who are listening, who are part of the ANU Nation, who are members of the ANU Nation, the individual growth that I may urge and I may prod, it's for the growth and the development of the entire community. Sometimes we can become a little selfish, and we say, well, Chief's working with me, Chief's working with me, because you start to believe that you're so important, but it's always for the growth of the community. And I've personally witnessed how working on yourself, doing what you're supposed to do can contribute to the development and the advancement of the community. I remember in my life, there was a very significant period when I was in somewhat of a limbo. I had some internal battles that I was facing and dealing with, and I certainly felt slightly disconnected from my purpose. Sometimes you go through that season when you're in the ring, and you got to kill the dragon, as the song says. But you step into the ring, and you're not as connected to your community in those times. Maybe you're not as connected to your purpose, but um, when I got to the place where I fully embraced the Anu way and fully embraced the teachings of the 14 Keys, this is before Anu even existed. This is before I even wrote the book, The 14 Keys. But when I got to that space where I fully embraced it and integrated it more on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, really integrated, then my transformation began. I transcended my form. Transformation, trans means to change, so you begin to change your form, and that's where healing begins. If your form is riddled and infected with certain diseases, one of the ways to heal from that is to get a new form, change your form. You know, um, when I started to grow and develop in the ways that I should, I noticed that my growth wasn't isolated. It wasn't, like sometimes people say, well, I got to learn it first myself, and then I'll come back and share it with the community. That's always people who are thieves. Whenever I hear them say that, like they'll get into the community. I say, why haven't you helped with this? Or why haven't you shared that? I'm still trying to learn it for myself. That's a thief. That's a straight up thief. And I can say it because thieves always think they're slicker than you. So even if you call them out like I just did, they'll still do it again because they always think they're smarter than even people who are seeing right through them. But like I said, when I started to really do that work and put that work in, I noticed that the growth wasn't isolated, and it empowered those around me. So me working on myself, so like empowered my circle. So my victories became, they became collective victories, and just in that, it sort of highlighted the interconnectedness. When you hear me say we are one, it highlighted the interconnectedness with myself and my circle and the people around me. So if you truly care for your tribe, and if you truly care for your family, and if you truly care for your community, you'll do the needed work. And a lot of times for some people, you know, they don't really have the unity of tribe internally. It's not because the tribe is not there. The tribe might be there, but they don't think like that. They just think from a very individualistic perspective. They wake up and all they think about is themselves. It's the ego. That's Satan. They believe that their problems are so big, or their concerns are so big, that there's no room for anyone else. There's no room for anything else. There's no room for a philosophy that would bring healing. or a philosophy that would cause them to have to touch the paths and the lives of other people, because there's so much with them that they wake up like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to go to work, I'm hungry, I'm depressed, I'm lonely, I'm sad. I. So there's no room to think about the success of other people. There's no room to think about elevating the whole community. You know, they don't realize that every step that they take towards improving themselves spiritually, righteously, emotionally, or even mentally, that it directly benefits the collective if they are attached to said collective. Yeah, I just laugh because I just think about how many people have come through my doors. I have several. It wasn't always ANU. It was Sadulu House and so many different things. Sons of Sankofa. I had many organizations that I ran, and they just come in on some eye stuff. I need this, and Chief, I need you. I need your help, brother Haru. I need your help. I need your help. I need your. I need you to get me right. I need you, and I'm hard headed. I'm telling you now, I'm hard headed. So even if you help those people, it doesn't do anything for the community. That's where I got to the point where I stopped. Like, so I don't really do consultations as much anymore. I'll do coaching, business coaching, performance coaching, those sort of things, organizational development and coaching. But the individual would just help me out personally, spiritually, and tell me that. I don't really do it as much anymore, because your growth shouldn't solely be for your benefit. It should be to strengthen the collective and the whole. So I look to really work with people who sort of think in that fashion. That's the interdependence, and it's the essence of us of communal harmony. Interdependence. Like, we're dependent upon each other. We have a level of independence, but then at the same time we're synchronizing and connecting with each other, because like one of the songs I really enjoy, "No Man Is an Island" by Dennis Brown. You know, and there's a deep truth to that. There's a deep truth to that. No man is an island. So if you could sort of picture it like this, or think of it like this, um, when you get to a place where you begin to cultivate inner peace, right? You bring peace to your family. You bring peace to your neighborhood. You bring peace to your community and beyond. When you get to a place where you authentically and sincerely heal your wounds, you create a space for other people to heal as well. You see, that's one of the great powers of unity. When you truly are unified and arm linked with other people. If you're finding that, like, well, I'm growing, I'm learning, but other people aren't, it's because you're not functioning as a tribe or with a tribe. That's why. So it becomes individualistic, and there's no real growth in that, because we're all interconnected. We are a collective, and we are one, whether you like it or not. So you can, you know, scientifically, we're all connected. But if you want to deny that reality or deny that truth, what ends up happening is that even your own personal growth becomes toxic to you. You think about so many entertainers and luminaries. They get to a place where someone's like, rap music, all they talk about is what I got. I got this, and I got that, and I got that, and I got that. You live a very lonely life. Yeah, you have a beautiful mansion. You can't really come outside. Everywhere you go, you got to have security with you. You can't even go somewhere by yourself. But you know. Um, so there's revolutionary thinking for those of us who come from that world and sort of come from that think tank of, liberation consciousness. Like, you don't really hear those kind of terms too much anymore, but I came up in the liberation movement, so my thinking is still sort of there, the work is still about the liberation of the community. But if we were to deepen our understanding and sort of explore the revolutionary idea a bit, I think a great individual to look at is Thomas Sankara. He's someone that I mentioned in the song. What did I name that song? Rise of the Roots. Rise of the Roots, I think. And I usually name like stuff. Some stuff I name immediately. Some stuff I name at the last minute when I'm like uploading it to the digital streaming platforms. Like, all right, I got to give it a name. But because originally that song was called Enjoy, and it just went a different direction. It's still a children's song though. But yeah, Thomas Sankara, he was a leader who I would say he really instilled dignity in his people. That was kind of sort of his, when you look at his determination towards Pan-Africanism, it was a very dignified thinking. And one of the things that he advocated for was the decolonization of thought, more so than just like freeing the land, but freeing the heavens, and decolonizing the heavens and breaking free from the continued influence of colonial powers, and uh, that influence, it spans many different things. It's not just we think about, the financial and, the slavery or things like that, but breaking free of colonial powers means breaking free from the economic systems, the social systems, the epistemic, systems in order to free a Kibalan, to have a free Kibalan or a free homeland, it requires the breaking free of that sort of mindset, right? And when you study Sankara, um, his philosophy was sort of a blend, I would say, because it definitely had Marxism. You could see like the influence of Marxism in his philosophy, but it was also very deeply and firmly rooted in Pan Africanism, right? So while some of his thoughts and teachings may have been inspired, or by Marxist thought, I would say he adapted that sort of Marxism to an Akibalanic or an African context, you know, and that allowed him to focus on the need to sort of reconfigure the relationship, right, between the people and their philosophy of thought and the state. Right, you have to really look at how do the people relate to the state. Now this is revolutionary thinking and this is revolutionary action, but you notice how much was done for the people. you know, when we speak about again the value of us being one and the value of unity and going beyond personal enrichment. Someone like Thomas Sankara, he recognized that one of the key pieces that he recognized was a lot, but that there was no liberation. Like liberation couldn't be achieved without addressing toxic patriarchy. I'm not saying patriarchy is toxic. I am an advocate of patriarchy, as I'm an advocate of matriarchy, but matriarchy exists beneath patriarchy, inside of patriarchy, and a healthy community, in a well-rounded, grounded community. The men are the heads. There are spaces for women to lead, but women should not be leading men. That's a curse. That's a cursed environment. But anyway, but he had to look at what we call toxic patriarchy, which a lot of times that's what feminists are really talking about. You're talking about Eurocentric toxic patriarchy. That ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm not European. And I got nothing to do with what they did, But anyway, but he advocated for women's rights, Thomas Sankara. And that's important because you have to look at how we perceive traditional gender roles when we're rebuilding and revolutionizing. And making sure that, one of the things that he was keen on, that the emancipation of the women was essential for Africa's reconstruction, and I totally agree. One of the things that you see in the ANU way is that I say that a woman should be free in the expressions of her emotions, right? But a matured woman. That doesn't mean you just act a fool and break stuff and tear stuff, because we know how violent women can be, or females can be, rather, because real women don't behave that way. So it doesn't mean that, or I just go off and curse people off or throw temper tantrums. You're a child. You are a straight up child when you behave that way. But you should be free in your emotional expression. In no instance, in the same instance, I should be free in my logical expression. And by having that together, you can become a proper critic of imperialism. You can be a proper critic of neocolonialism. And like similar to Sankara, he was able to denounce the economic exploitation of his people. And he really advocated to ending the people's aid, the people's dependency upon aid. And really advocating for self-reliance, and also the recovery of stolen assets. He was big on. I know that may all seem off the point, but it really isn't, because we're talking about nation building, right? Now, in order for you to get to that space where you can start to look at those sort of ideas and understand everything that I just said, I know some of you listening was like, huh? Well, oh, all right, let me go. Let me let him keep talking until he says something I understand. That's what the rewind button is for. Go back, make sure you get everything, because nation building is there's formulas to everything. Of course, you hear me say that often, but it's not a one shot deal. Like, I'm gonna have a bunch of babies because I'm nation building. What? Or I'm gonna go buy me some land and learn how to grow turnips. I'm nation building. Like, there are laws to everything. There are formulas to everything, and we have some beautiful examples, which is a blessing, of people who applied those laws and applied that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding in order to do something great for their people. Thomas Sankara is just one of them. We could never forget, like, Kwame Nkrumah as well. Just for examples. But I think one of the great inclusions to that is the law of correspondence. The law of correspondence, which many of you may, one of the seven hermetic laws that many of you may see as like a esoteric principle, maybe more so than even a law. But it's encapsulated basically in the phrase "as above, so below," right? As within, so without. So the same thing that's above is the same thing that's down here below. The same thing that's inside of you is the same thing that's outside of you. So that sort of principle teaches you that our internal state directly shapes our external reality, right? Now, again, I'm giving you this as a thought guide for nation building. It starts with the personal development of the individual. You can't get around that, man. Like, if you got some sick addictions and you just have a track record of making stupid decisions, you're not as intelligent in certain areas that you should be, that you could be if you weren't so freaking lazy, then you will never build a family, even, let alone a community, let alone a nation, right? Because of the way things are connected. When you look at alchemy and look at your alchemical principles, alchemy symbolizes the internal, process of transforming. Let's say we're applying it to people, transforming our base emotions into higher spiritual wisdom, right? And higher spiritual understanding. So I'm gonna give it to Chokma and Bina. But it's the process of taking very base, lower chakra emotions and transforming them into higher spiritual understanding, and wisdom. And in alchemy, we have what is called the great work. And in the great work, which many of you may have probably heard before, I know I've mentioned it a bunch of times, and we have an alchemy class on the Sadulu House website. So some of you may have taken that class. But in the great work, we speak about the transforming of base metals into gold. Like a lot of you probably familiar with that, like idea of I'm gonna turn lead into gold, right? And that symbolizes the purification, or the purification and enlightenment. Taking something and purifying it and making it into something else, right? Or making it into something that represents enlightenment or represents purification, similar to Yahweh Shai turning water into wine. That was a process of alchemy. Now, again, when we speak about the formulas of things and the process of things, alchemy has a formula attached to it. And, one of the stages, or we can look at the three prime stages of alchemy. We have Negredo, Nigredo, Negredo. And Negredo is the blackening. That's the thing that happens first when you're dealing with alchemy. There's a blackening, and the blackening represents a stage of decomposition in alchemy. And when you're decomposing something, you're also purifying it at the same time. It's like, you got a splinter you got to take out. So you take a safety pin and you put it on the stove first, you burn it, and then so that's when you confront your shadow self and you acknowledge your flaws. The blackening, or the negredo, is going into the shadow space for purification, really taking a look at yourself and seeing like, yeah, this is what's going on with me. Taking that personal accountability, being an adult, being mature, right? Then you have albedo. Albedo is Albedo. Albedo, that's called the whitening stage in alchemy. And that's a stage where it's cleansing and it's purifying. It's a cleansing and a purifying stage. But the whole purpose of it, is you're cleansing and purifying so that you can reach a stage of greater clarity. So now you're looking for clarity. And then you have the rubedo stage in alchemy. That's Rubedo. That's called the reddening. So whereas albedo is called the whitening, rubedo is called, excuse me, the reddening. And that's the last stage, of that sort of kind of alchemical process. And the whole thing about the rubedo is when you take everything, like you integrate all of the different aspects of yourself and your higher attainment, and you sort of bringing it all into a space of wholeness. It's like taking the 1 to 9 and getting a cipher. You take everything that you've had on the journey that's been of higher representation, and the reddening, or the rubedo stage, is when you put it all together into a wholeness, right? So with alchemy, again, using this as a model of nation building, it mirrors the journey of self development. If you caught it, in order to properly grow and to evolve and to develop and to repent, there has to be an honest assessment. And your honest assessment is your negredo stage in alchemy. It's honestly, yeah, this is where I'm at, man. This is what's going on with me. And then there has to be some level of consistent practice and some level of goal setting, right? Now that's your albedo stage. Your albedo stage is when you're being consistent. You're not just doing it one time, or have an emotional, spiritual, cathartic experience where you're crying and, oh, this is what's going on with me, and then it just ends there, right? But when you go into the albedo stage, it's like, no, now I'm going to establish some consistent practices to be where I'm supposed to be, right? And when you actively engage in community engagement, when you sort of You you start sharing your successes. This is, you're engaging and you're, wow, this is what's worked for me. This is where I was. This is where I am. I guess kind of like the church has like testimony service, that would be like the rubedo stage, where the transformed individual now sort of integrates themselves into the community, and they're empowered to contribute to the betterment of the community at that stage, right? Um, so I'm using terms like community, and maybe that can seem a bit small, but it also applies to nation building. A nation has to confront its history. That's Negredo. Just like a family has to confront their history. How many of you have families where it's like you got some skeletons that no one wants to speak about, that need to be spoken about? That's not, no one wants to go through the blackening, through the Negredo, you know, and then you have to build institutions for a nation. So first you have to acknowledge your history, Negredo. You have to build institutions. That's the albedo, the whitening, because those institutions allow for consistent teaching, consistent deprogramming. And then you go to your rubedo stage in nation building, where now you're looking at unity and you're striving for self-reliance, as Thomas Sankara, advocated for so much. So you could look at these processes internally, you could look at them externally, but when we change our inside world, we change our outside world. Like there's no escaping that. There's there's no shortcut to that powerful concept, or shortcut is not really the word. There's no hack. Yeah. There's no hack that gets you around that powerful concept of like, yo, um, I have to change me. I got to, period. If I don't, if I'm toxic, then I create a toxic family. A toxic family creates a toxic tribe. Toxic tribe creates a toxic community. Toxic community creates a toxic state. Toxic state creates a toxic nation. Toxic nation creates a toxic world. Just goes on and on and on and on, right? It just reverberates outward. So a lot of what we receive and we take on is from Western individualism. And sometimes you don't even know when you're caught in the middle of all of that Western individualism. Like you don't know when your mind frame and your thinking has been hijacked, or you might enjoy the hijacking. You might like thinking like that. You'll say you don't. Well, I don't want to be this way, but you do, because you would have stopped already. So I would look at some practical steps I could probably give you based on Sankara's direction and Sankara's, sort of revolutionary thought, and also filtered through the ANU teachings, um, in an effort to really foster a self-development journey for those of you who are on it. And I'm going to assume you're here, right? You could be watching something more entertaining, or someone more entertaining than this monotone voice that I have. But, so I'm going to assume that you are on a journey. So, of course, where does it begin? When you say, well, man, I want to get myself together, man, I want to be this, or I want to have a community. Like, why don't we have a community like this where we could do this? Because you won't do honest assessment. 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. Because when I start talking to people and giving honest feedback, that's when they get offended, they clench up, they get defensive, or they want to run away, fight or flight, right? So it begins with honest assessment. That's a practical step. You begin by reflecting openly on your current personal and societal situation. What's going on with you personally? What's going on with you, in society, whether it be your economics or, your family status or how you're relating to other people, your mental status, to how it relates to how you're engaging with the world. That's where it begins. And then from there, your second like practice, I would say hands-on, would be looking at purposefully or purposeful, divinely aligned goals. Clearly defined goals that resonate with divine purpose. A lot of times we create goals that got nothing to do with the divine whatsoever. It's just what we want. And then we'll try to make it that. That's where you get those famous statements. Well, I'm learning this so I can bring it back to the community. You're a mother effing liar. No, you're not. You want it for you, period. I notice people who say that never ever bring anything back to the community. Ever. And I'm patient. I got the patience of an elephant. I'll sit and watch for years. Person says, well, I'm going to school to get this certification for this because that's something I want to bring to the community. Okay, well, let me watch and wait and see how this goes. I'll watch a person for 4 or 5 years. They won't lift a finger for the community. It's always the same. So, if your goals are meaningful, right? Just like your consistent daily practices, that's your third one. Commit to a daily, meaningful and spiritual practice. Commit to a daily spiritual practice. That's your rubedo phase. And then from there you'll have active community engagement. That's your other step, right? Start to seek out and build strong, authentic, and real relationships within supportive groups. So you're not just using a whole group as well, I'm a part of this. Do you have relationships with people within the group? Or you just sit, I'm just watching, I'm just listening, I'm just beat it. You add nothing, you're only taking. Another very practical step is learn to celebrate and share your successes, right? Regularly, and not just yours, but others, like regularly acknowledge, and publicly celebrate your own personal achievements and community achievements. Do that, right? Like, don't hate, congratulate, as we always say. Well, some of us say, but make it sort of a practice to celebrate. Hey, this happened for me, or this is what's going on. Yay, or whatever. And then when other people, have done things, that's something I always tell people to pay attention to. You want to look at someone who's really got hate in their heart. They never celebrate other people. Never got any. Or sometimes you'll see guys who never have anything positive or celebratory to say about women unless they like those women, and they're saying it in front of them to try to curry favor with them. Suckers, freaking simps. And then you got females who never have anything good to say about other women because they're so insecure. They can never celebrate the growth or the successes of other women. And if you do as a man, they'll go berserk on you. So when you look at Sankara, he led with community well-being. Like that was where things started. And that community well-being, it sharply contrasts Western individualism, right? And in many Akibalanic concepts, the concept of what we say tribe. So I don't use that word often, but I think it just helps when I'm speaking publicly. It represents a strong sense of community, and it represents a shared identity. So Sankara recognized the importance of building communal, I would say, foundation to create strong and unified nations. Right? Sankara understood that individual development is sort of intertwined and interwoven and interconnected and interdependent, with collective progress and with authentic, sincere, and true nation building. The individual progress, it all works hand in hand. It's the law of correspondence. The individual is the smaller micro and the larger community is the macro. And that requires active participation. That requires active participation and empowerment of all members of that society. You know, in Western mindset, it's the opposite. So a lot of times when you feel your insecurities and your anger and your envy and your jealousy rise up, it's the Westerner in you. It's that sick slave that's still alive in you. So whereas from your origins, from the Kibalionic origins, we're celebrating the growth and the successes of everyone. In the Western mindset, you only think about yourself. So other people's growth and success feels like a threat to you. You know, Western individualism, it places an emphasis on personal autonomy and self-interest. Well, what's that going to do for me? How does that help me? Or so and so did this, but what about when I did it? You didn't say nothing when I did it. You know, you make everything about you, and you know your whole point is you're undermining social cohesion. You know, where the group can be together and cohesive, you're constantly hindering it. You're constantly undermining it. You're constantly putting a stumbling block in the way of nation building, where communal values are actually they're paramount. You know, within a nation building context, you build based off of our shared values. You know, so in Western thought, you know, you're removing shared values and it's all about personal and self-interest. So you never build a nation. But those who run the nations in Western context, they have shared values. You see? So they use your Eastern forms of thinking in order to build their nations and to keep themselves at the Merkaba or at the top point, you know, of the nation, and they keep you fragmented down at the bottom, socially fragmented, stuck in forms of inequality, stuck in forms of non-solidarity, where there's a lack of solidarity, and they're constantly hindering the effort needed for national development among the people. See, that's when you know you're being ruled over by foreign deities. And a lot of times those foreign deities are very much alive and active in your own psyche. You know, they're very much alive and active in your own psyche because um, you've allowed them to sort of block each step towards a stronger we. When one member of the tribe wins, we all win. If one member of the tribe wins, everybody wins. But your Western mindset will only have you upset that some one member of the tribe won. Oh, they always get to such and such, or they always this. Why is it never me? Why is it got to be you? It's we. You see. So I know that may have been maybe a little uncomfortable for some of you to hear because it may pinpoint where you're at exactly and the insecurities that you feel, or the sources of some of your anger, some of your depression, you know, some of your feeling not seen and not heard in the world because you focus so much on Western individualism. But I would challenge you, and I would challenge you to actively implement the practical steps that I gave you. You know, today, whenever today, why are you anyway? I would tell you to implement them whenever you watch this, whenever you hear it. Start immediately and start to recognize that your individual development is it directly strengthens the entire community. So sit back for a second, take a deep breath, and think about like, do I really give a crap about the community? And if I don't, what philosophy am I standing on? Right? I would urge you to start there and recognize that each step you take towards forwarding forwarding your growth journey helps to build a more solid and a more stable foundation for all of our collective future, everyone. Imagine if I only thought about myself and all these things that I teach you and I know and I share from my dome, I just kept to myself in order to enrich myself. For some of you who have contacted me and said, Chief, you saved my life with the things you taught, or I was on the brink of suicide, or I did try to unalive myself. And then somebody shared a video, I started tuning in and like, you changed my whole perspective on life. Well, just imagine if I didn't. Just imagine if I kept it to me and just became, you know, the greatest person that I could be with based on societal standards. Where would you be? So if you remain committed to the rebuilding of Zion within yourself, Zion, that dry city within yourself, that light city, and the spiritual center that we talk about in the ANU way, you'll start to see that every intentional step towards personal alignment with the divine principles, it's a step and it's an action that significantly contributes to the greatest manifestation of the creator's kingdom on earth. And remember, as above, so below. So as you're connecting with and building with individuals here on the planet and strengthening the community through your striving, you're doing the same thing in the next dimension. That's kind of deep, because if you think about it, well, some, I don't pray, but some people pray to something that they see as greater than them in another dimension in order to help them in this dimension. What if you're that thing that something else prays to underneath you? And it's required that you build your heavenly dimension so that they have a heaven to aspire to and pray to. You know, if you always strive to embody the best of Yah's creation in man, woman, and child, which is really the bringing forth of the Messiah. What is the Messiah? The Messiah is Emmanuel. That's what the Messiah is when the Creator is present with us through someone. But when you strive for that pure embodiment, you know, we all get to a place where we can live out, continuously live out, and reinforce the profound truth, which is we're one. We're one on this planet. So, you know, I challenge you to apply those practical steps. I challenge you to put that effort in, to put that work in, to personally develop, go through those different stages of the alchemical process. You know, read the story of Nehemiah and look at what I spoke about there. There are numerous clips that you could watch on Thomas Sankara, you know, if you want. And he's a good person to know anyway, you know. But again, like I said, I invite you to take those practical steps towards personal development, towards aligning yourself with the divine, not just for your sake, for the sake of your children, for the sake of your loved ones, for the sake of your neighborhood, for the sake of your community. You know, align yourself with the mission of building a greater community. And that building of a greater community starts on a journey that you take within in order to reestablish and rebuild the walls of where you were once vulnerable to attack. Some of us have walls up, but it's just walls of ego. I don't trust people. I don't let people in. There's something wrong with you. You need to fix that. It's a very childish way of moving through the world. That's not how strong adults move through the world. Don't be such a sucker all the time. I know that sounds so insensitive, but the extra sensitivities haven't helped anyone up until this point. So maybe we need to try something different. You know, I invite you to join all of us in ANU on this journey. You know, this journey of nation building, this journey of being rooted in divine principles, this journey of really exploring and seeing what collective strength looks like. Becoming a part of a movement that acknowledges the power of unity, acknowledges the power of shared growth, um, acknowledges the power of mutual upliftment. I'll lift you up. Lift me up. Spiritually. Don't worry. But we all need that manifested keeper. We say, all right, am I my sister's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? Should be. So together we can manifest a vision of a strong, thriving nation, built upon the foundations of righteousness, built upon the foundations of propriety, built upon the foundations of order, and, most importantly, built upon the foundations of purpose. Many of us are invested in a nation right now, and we don't even know what the heck it's here for. Some of us work at jobs where we spend 8 to 10 hours of our day, not to mention travel time, and we don't truly know what they do or how they make their money. We don't know all there is to know about them. We just know we show up there, we do the part that they want us to do, we get a check. But we don't really know, like, what are we here really doing? So building a nation and a community and a group on principles of righteousness and purpose are vital. So I urge you, reach out, anulifeglobal.org. Look for your place within the community. The work, no matter how you chop and dice it, the work begins with you, but it flourishes when we unite. Um, I was going to quote that song from Neo, but I don't really remember it. I'm something when I'm by myself, but I'm a force. We're a force when we're together. Something like that. I know I butchered it, but I ain't really like the song, but I just remember that part. So let's build together. Come on, let's build. Let's grow together. Let's create a lasting legacy together. And I say that not as it's not just it's a call to redemption. You know, I've always told our new members, and I'll probably always say it, if there's just 3 people left in ANU, if 2 people, I don't care. Whoever's there is supposed to be there, right? And I only need 3 families to do anything I want to, like, really manifest. You only need 3 families. We already got that. So, you know, so it's about you. It's about, I'm challenging you to actively implement practical steps starting today that recognize your individual work that's needed. And when I speak about ANU, that's me throwing a rope over the edge to many of you who are floating around aimlessly on the water in life rafts with a hole in it. I'm on the boat. I'm good money. I'm straight. Yeah, I'm on the boat. We got a destination that we headed to, and we got 5 years supply of food and fresh water. We all right. We're good. But when that rope is thrown over, it's because I love you all so much. That's something that the Creator gave me as a child. It's not something that I got to know people and know other humans, and I just love humanity. It wasn't that. It was something that was instilled, at an early age. So I love you like the Messiah did. I love you the same way. So when I'm always throwing that rope over and say, hey, join ANU, and let's build a foundation. Let's look at what our collective future can look like together. And when I often have to put myself into the place of the bad guy, if you will, that's out of love. I've had people say that to me before, like, well, Chief, I know you like going off on people. You like telling people off. I don't even like people like that. I love people, but I don't really like people. Anyone who knows me personally knows, like, he's the toughest person to get in touch with. He never picks up his phone. He doesn't respond to much communication. You could come to my house and knock on my door. I won't answer. I'm famous for that too. Yeah, I hear you not. And I'm not going to hide behind nothing. I'll be walking right. You can look through the window. You see me walking by, so I definitely don't enjoy having to get in people's face and tell them stuff about themselves and watch them getting angry and, trying to hold themselves back because they don't, they might got some love or respect. I don't enjoy any of that stuff, man. Why can't we just all kick it? That's that's what I want. Just why can't we just be chill? Like do what you're supposed to do. I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do, and let's just not be jerks to each other. Everybody keep their hands to themselves. Don't be rude with each other. Be kind. Be loving. Respect people's space. Respect people's ways that they have about them, their quirks and their idiosyncrasies. Everybody just chill out. That's me. So when you see me having to do anything outside of that, like teach in these insights or reprimand or say something that's fiery, I am following the will of my Father. I am doing my Father's work because I love you. And I asked my Father, how best can I serve you? And how best can I restore this nation? How best can I redeem and restore my people back into the good graces of the cosmos and the universe and give them the codes for ascension? So that way, when my people return to this planet in physical form, that my people who are here will not be left behind, lost, and burnt up. How can I best do that? Well, sometimes you're going to have to say stuff that's going to make people cry. I don't like making people cry. Sometimes you have to say stuff to people that's going to make them never speak to you again. But don't worry, I'm going to work with them after that. Oh, God. Sometimes you're going to have to say things to people that's going to confuse them and make them think that you have feelings for them that you don't actually have for them. But they're going to get confused because no one has ever showed them any kind of love. And then you're going to have to work your way out of that and explain that and be in all kind of awkward situations. That's what you mean? Yeah, you're going to have to be in all kind of awkward situations. You're going to have to be in amongst a bunch of people that don't care if you slept 1 hour the night before or 2 hours. They don't care nothing about you. They just see you as a resource. Chief, I got a question. Chief, can you tell me this? Chief, can you tell me that? Hey, can you help out and share the video? Can you click like on the video? Can you comment? Oh, when you join the Facebook group and you enter into the group, here's a little questionnaire. Just tell us something about yourself. I ain't doing that. But Chief, I need to call. I need to talk to you about something. It's real important. Yeah, you're gonna have to do that. I gotta do that. I gotta be around these selfish people who want everything but give nothing. Yeah, you gotta do that. Okay, I'll do it because I love them. I love them. I'll do it. And I love the Creator. I'll do it. So when I'm dropping the rope over, it's not for my benefit. I promise you. I don't want to see you drown. I don't want to see you get taken out by nuclear blast. I don't want to see you destroyed with a wicked nation because you have aligned yourself with a nation that's being destroyed even as we speak. Look around you. Look at the cold front that's sweeping through the US right now. I could go on and on and on. You don't want to be anywhere near them. And this is not race. I'm not talking about a race. I know people get excited. Oh, is he talking about white people? No. Remember, the scriptures say you were scattered throughout the nations. It's not a nation. It's not a group of people that you're going to look at this planet and not find an Israelite. So we're talking to everybody. So I'm speaking about spiritual nations, and physical and social and governmental nations that you align yourself with that are being destroyed and are going to be destroyed in an even more rapid rate. You're going to see it speed up. And you sitting right there in the middle of it. But I'm conscious though. I'm woke. Then why are you there, stupid? If you so woke, why are you there? Get away from those people. Get away from them. If that means you have to downsize, downsize. That means now you got to shop in thrift stores, shop in thrift stores. You know, or you gotta go live in a trailer somewhere. Live in a trailer. You're gonna be destroyed messing with them. So here's a rope. Here's a rope. Here's Obatala's chain. Climb up the chain. Get out of the deluge of emotions and ignorance and addiction. Because you have a whole nation of people who work fervently to make you other than yourself. So that way you will be rejected by your Yah. That's why they do it. Eat this pork. Wear this dress. Walk around half naked. Go to war against your natural counterpart. Do all of these things that put you in direct opposition with your creator. So you can be destroyed with them. See, that's a demon's job. That's why I'm very careful when I'm speaking to you sometimes. And I have to let you know, I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to your demon. Your demon causes you to act out and act a fool. And your demon wants me to destroy you. Then the demon's happy. Got another one destroyed. Click check mark off. It's like when you listen to gangster rap. That's demonic music. It's meant to destroy people. And it has destroyed whole families, whole lives, whole communities. Gangster rap. Right? Check another one off. And all the gangster rappers, ain't none of them gangsters. Ain't none of them gangsters. So the thing is, it's like your demons, their goal is for you to be destroyed. They want to destroy the creation of Allah. They want to destroy the creation of the Almighty. That's what they want to do. They want to destroy creation. So they get inside of creation. And then I'll get inside of this creation. You get inside of that creation. So I'll get into the woman. You get into the man. Now put them in front of each other and then cause them to fight. You remember like back when you were in grade school and everybody wanted to see a fight? And then somebody from behind will push one into the other so they start fighting. All right? That's what the demons do. Now the man and woman, pow, they destroy each other. And the demons float away happily. Did it again. Now let's go find some more to destroy. So when you speak, when you see somebody wilding out and going crazy, speak to the demon. Don't speak to the person. The demon goes crazy when you speak to him. It's painful because now you're shining the light of the creator on them. And they're like vampires. Light destroys them. But if you shine your light on the dark and not into the dark, they get to live. So if you attack the surface, which is the person, the personality, the flesh, and not attack the spirit that's animating the flesh, then the demon's like, well, as long as you attack throw your rocks at the outside, you ain't bothering me. But start speaking spirit language and go into the spirit. Watch what happens. See, the rope I'm dropping over is spirit language. The chain I'm dropping over is spirit language. So a lot of you may want the physical feeling of the magic and the mysticals because you're possessed by the demons. When I speak the spirit language of redemption, morality, development, nation building, honor, integrity, order, it doesn't feel so good. It doesn't feel as good as me saying, Oshun loves you. Oshun is all about love and connectedness, and she loves you. She's smiling on you. That feels good, but it's just a bunch of BS. Even in my Orisha teachings, you never heard me say anything like that. I leave that for other people who don't know anything about Orisha. They'll tell you that stuff all day because everybody's repeating the same thing. Ogun is war.